I have Chris, the founder of Mutant Metals, back for another podcast, and we're just going to have a conversation. Chris, would you mind just kicking us off?
Yeah. I mean, we were having a discussion the other day about, some of the stuff going on in the space and uh, how some stuff's kind of scary. I just kind of want to maybe give some insight, and I don't know, maybe we could give people some ideas about different ways of handling things. I don't know, but
Yeah,
just my opinion on what's going on. But um, I just hit 5 years November 1st for the business officially. And I don't know, been thinking about a lot of different stuff. So, um, one of the things obviously being, what I think a lot of people have seen already is a lot of litigation in the space. And, we talked about that a little bit before. Like, you know, one of the big things now is companies possibly going after reviewers for saying some things that they didn't like in their reviews. Um, you know,
yeah. Let me just cut you off. So, a little context for the listeners: we haven't had any sort of conversation. I've tried to stay out of it. I have my thoughts, but I also want things to play out a little bit more. And I've also been very curious to hear from like another company's perspective who's deep in the space. So, Chris came to me and
yeah,
was
we
like,
haven't.
do you want to just have a conversation?" And I was like, Not really." Um, but that we should have this conversation. So ultimately, I appreciate you, coming out to coming to me and just asking like, "Hey, do you want to talk about this?" So I don't
Yeah,
really know your perspective, so
right.
would love to just
Yeah,
hear
we
what
didn't
you
have
think.
any in-depth conversation about any of this prior.
No, so you
But
could surprise me with what you think, but very,
yeah, I
very,
mean,
very
honestly, I
curious.
haven't really talked to anybody else about it either. It's just, I think it's came to the surface in the past few days. Um, I'm not sure that it's the first incident like this, but it's probably it's the one that people know about right now. So I'm not going to mention any names. I'm not really trying to like demonize companies or reviewers or whatever, and I don't think that's the best way of going about it anyway. Uh, you know, People are going to have really strong opinions, and I really don't like the climate that we have overall, whether it's political or in our space or whatever, where everything's so binary. Um, and I think events like this and the way they've been handled, I think they kind of force that binary perspective, um, which is you're forcing people to kind of choose a team, basically. We've seen that in a bunch of different incidents, like, with me and Rogue and um, other people in large companies with things like, maybe people borrowing product designs and IP and things like that. But um, I think the biggest reason I wanted to talk is because there's this attitude right now of everything's kind of like zero sum. And I've heard that exact phrasing from, um, you know, other manufacturers and people that run businesses where they kind of feel like no matter what direction they take, it's just a zero sum game. There's no, you know, it's just about making the next dollar and moving on to the next project. And I don't think it needs to be like that. And I think our space is unique. The home gym space is unique in as far as like a testing ground for these things because of how interpersonal everything is. You commercial gyms kind of develop their own climates and they're kind of isolated, but we're all our own individual spaces and people, and we all talk as such, but we also have our groups that we belong in and people we talk to, and um but perspectives kind of get, you know, too oversimplified, I think. Um, but in the case that, everybody's talking about right now, where you have a manufacturer, um, well, in this case, is more of an importer, product designer, or whatever you want to consider them. Um, they had sent a prominent reviewer a piece of equipment. That reviewer did maybe a harsh take on that product. Um, Depends on how you look at it, whatever. Uh, and now there's some litigation follow up with that, maybe some claims of defamation, not telling the truth, things like that. Um, and just to start off from like the manufacturer's perspective, like I said, I'm not trying to demonize anybody here on either side because there's two sides to this. Um, but you know, as a manufacturer, somebody in the space from the the side of providing equipment and talking to reviewers and things like that. Um, you get a really bad negative review like that on a product, and that could really, you know, really hurt a manufacturer pretty substantially. Um, so when I see something like a defamation case or something like that, and I've tried to read through everything and look at it a little bit more deeply about what claims are being made, and um, I understand the idea of if a manufacturer really thinks somebody isn't telling the truth about their product, and then they put out a video that gets a ton of views, and now you feel like you're painted into a corner and you have to go out and defend yourself. And I think litigation, other than maybe an IP, um, should be, and even in IP, but that's a little tougher because of the way the law is. But like with patents and such. But in a case like this, where it's a reviewer that's just putting out a a review or a hyperbolized video of like a piece of equipment and their opinion on it or whatever, I think litigation needs to be like the last step that we take. I don't, I've seen larger problems resolved a lot quicker with um just kind of trying to talk things out, trying to figure out different solutions. Um, in this case, if I were the equipment provider and somebody had, um, made a review like that of my product, I mean, at first, it's going to be a shock. Like, maybe you did think the product was good or whatever. Um, and people are going to have different opinions on whether or not they put enough effort into, you know, reviewing this product themselves before they started sending it out and whatever. Um, and ultimately, it is the manufacturer's job to make sure that the product they're putting out is a good product. As far as like legs to stand on for a manufacturer, the easiest thing that you can do to make sure there's no future issues really is to just put out a good product. Um, and the more effort you put into putting out a good product, you know, the less issues you're going to have as things progress. Um, Almost every manufacturer's had like recalls and products where they've missed something. And, that's kind of how we progress through things. Um, but in this particular case, you have a product that a lot of other people are making. There's a lot of information out there. Maybe the manufacturer should have done a little bit better job of making sure that this product is sound before sending it out to reviewers or whatever. But like, let's say you're the manufacturer or the provider, importer, whatever, and you get this scathing review about how bad your product is, gets a ton of views. And in the case of an importer, why this might be particularly scary is, if they've gotten to the stage where they're sending out equipment to reviewers, they very well may have already ordered hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of inventory. And then now you have someone that's saying, don't buy any of this. Like, so now it's like, well, now you have this basically a bunch of scrap metal that you can't move because it's, people don't want to buy it for various reasons. Personally, the way that I think I would have handled that, um, well, I don't have the benefit of having the financial ability to really just lean on somebody hard with litigation to be able to, like, you know, whether it's intimidation or whatever the motivation is there. That's not the only reason I wouldn't lean on the litigation side in this case. You have a video that comes out um, with all these views. To me, I want to look at that as what's the opportunity here? Like, if let's just assume I don't have the resources to do all this stuff. How can I handle this issue by spending the least amount of money and making the least amount of people upset about it? Um, you're going to make someone upset no matter what you do. It's going to happen. I probably would have approached the reviewer first and been like, hey, this is our situation. We've ordered a ton of this product. Um, you put out this review. A lot of people look at your reviews to buy products. So now we're in this situation. We're worried we're not going to be able to move this inventory. And, is there something that we could work out here that might lead to, a relatively positive outcome? Now, I don't know if any of that's happened. I haven't talked to either one of these people in depth about any of this. So I just don't know. I don't have the details in that aspect. I just know what everybody else can see as far as public documents on the court case and the video that was released and the comments on that video. My problem is that if if this really is about merit of the product, like the reviewer is just outright lying about what your product is, why not put out your own video, go through point by point of what this reviewer said, and, maybe even do it with the reviewer? Like, it's not necessary, but go through point by point of what they claimed and why you don't think that they have the right attitude or perspective on your product, and defend your product. There's nothing wrong with defending your product, but when you start defending it to the point where you're ignoring things, I think you're going to have problems. So, if this is really about merit, I think you could go about it a different way to, you know, um, to explain away these claims that are being made about your product. If someone is outright lying, then the easiest defense of that would be just telling the truth, displaying the truth, and proving it. Um, so I think that's step one. If you really think someone's lying about your product, just get out there and tell everybody why they're lying about your product. Um, I think and then, if there are things that are a real issue, um, try to put some effort into solving that issue. You got a video like that has tens of thousands of views or however. I haven't looked at it recently, but um, I would look at that as how can I use this as a springboard to, demonstrate what kind of company I am, what my problem solving ability is, or when we do bring in products that don't necessarily meet a certain standard. I think that really shows your audience or your customer base, you know, what kind of company you are, what are the people like behind the company. And when you go straight to this litigation step, which, you know, is honestly kind of standard in a lot of industries, um, especially with IP, like I said, that's different, but, you know, defamation, things like that, it's super common for these types of lawsuits to come out. for various reasons. But um, like I said, I don't think it's the best way to handle it. You have this video that has a ton of views. Why not think of a way to use that as a springboard to, show how you're going to solve the problem? If you're importing equipment, that could be difficult because you're trying to solve an issue. Maybe you're kind of limited to whatever the manufacturer of that equipment over in China or wherever it's made can, what they could provide to help you alter the product. And it might be too late because you already ordered the product and it's already, either on its way or it's already landed and you're storing it and trying to move it. Um, but I would probably be looking for some kind of domestic solution. And if I can't figure something out, I don't think there's any shame in going on one of these large pages or going to talk to somebody that could distribute the information and go, you know, this is the situation of our company. This is what happened. I can't really think of a good solution to fix this, and it's going to be a huge financial burden for us to fix it. Um, is there anybody else out there that might be able to help us fix this? Because that's our goal, is to fix the issue. And any company, really, the goal should be to deliver a product that's worth the money you pay for it. And especially when you're talking about products that are thousands of dollars, I think that pressure's on even more, because especially in home gym spaces, someone that spends $2, $3, $4,000 on a piece of equipment, and then you get in your space and you set it up and it doesn't perform the way that you were hoping it does. That could be a huge financial burden to an individual too. So, you know, I think there needs to be some different approach. That's not, let's lean on these people or sue them, or, because you leave it open to interpretation of what the motive is beyond what the lawsuit claims, because not everybody's going to believe what the lawsuit claims is the actual motivation behind it. And you have this kind of black box issue that a lot of larger companies have this issue because they don't really have a lot of personal representation in the space, is that you're looking from the outside in, and maybe you don't really understand the situation. There's a lot of different factors, but if you don't come out and explain those things and you don't talk to people or whatever, there's no way of knowing. And that's where you get into this binary thinking, like, I'm never buying anything from this company or this reviewer. I'm done listening to them because they don't tell the truth or whatever. But I'm definitely worried about it getting to the point where reviewers are afraid to put out reviews that are honest, because they might be afraid that a manufacturer or supplier is going to come after them, because they felt, maybe they felt like they were telling the truth fully, is based off of how their interaction with the product and the manufacturer. Because then we get into this issue where, what's the point of listening to reviews? If you're going to turn everybody into a representative of a company with extra steps, which is kind of what this lawsuit looks like it's claiming, is that, they're essentially claiming that the reviewer had motives beyond what's on the surface, and that they do reviews for other large companies, and these large companies have affiliates, which he's one, and the affiliates make money on items sold. And if they have a positive outlook on another company's item, it's going to take away sales from those other companies and reduce their affiliates. I mean, But if they have an affiliate with the company that they're doing the review on and they put out a negative review, you know, if that was the case, why not? Why be a reviewer and have a bunch of different competing companies as affiliates? Why not just zero in on the most bang for your buck, as far as like this company moves the most units and they pay enough as an affiliate that no matter what, I'm going to try to paint them in a positive light as much as possible because that pads my pocket. Um, and maybe that kind of stuff goes on. Money motivates people in weird ways. Do I think that's what happened in this particular case? I don't. I don't think so. Just based off of like the outside observation of it, that you know, there's too many other factors that are like it just doesn't that just doesn't make any sense to me personally. Um, I don't think it's worth trying to do that, trying to purposely go after a company and say that their products are not good or whatever, just because you have affiliates with other companies. That gets real murky real fast, you know? Um, I don't, I mean, what's your opinion on it? What do you, from, the way you've been
Yeah.
looking at it? I mean, what do you feel is,
Yeah. I have a few comments about what you said. Um, Number one, I think I agree litigation is last thing you want to do. That is, and that also goes into, what you kind of mentioned, uh, first with like, there's people that see this as like a zero sum game. It's just like me versus them. Um, just do whatever you need to do to beat the competition at the time. I've said this before. I think, just going back to the basics of a home gym, like it just makes sense for so many people. And there's a massive audience that doesn't have a home gym yet. And I think this entire community is just getting started. And I think litigation is the best way to slow it down, um, and make people confused and make people scared to do certain things. Um, I also think with every setback, there's an opportunity, kind of like what you were mentioning. We've seen a lot of examples where people go back to the drawing board and make something even better. Um, it was also a great point that you said they probably have a ton of inventory. Like companies probably have a ton of inventory with certain products, and there's probably some sort of panic um with trying to sell it after a poor review. I think there's also just risk with all of this. So sending a product for review can be risky. Like, um, there's no guaranteed outcome of a great review, especially knowing somebody who um, doesn't just paint every single product perfectly and at least has some sort of critique with probably every item they've ever reviewed. Um, not to say that, maybe review could have been done differently, maybe. But we also don't know all of the facts.
yeah,
We've seen what the litigation looks like. We know there was some miscommunication. It part of it too is there's value in like being open and open company, and not just like kind of hiding behind the shadows. And um, if something does happen, if you have a great product, I don't know, you can like get out there and explain yourself. There was no explaining that was done publicly after the review. Um, those are my initial thoughts. Just keeping in mind, like, we do want to see how, um, as more information comes out, what's the issue. But I think why you wanted to chat was the bigger picture, and knowing that if this keeps happening in the industry, it's just going to turn into a bloodbath,
Yeah.
and it's not going to help grow the community for all, or grow the entire home gym space for all, which is not just in this country, it's worldwide. So I think we're kind of leading that trend worldwide. And this sort of stuff may not be the proper way to go about solving situations like this if it continues to happen. Yeah, I think those are my initial thoughts based off of what you said. Um,
Yeah. And
yeah.
like you said, there's certain benefit in it being open as a company. Um, you might hear my dogs in the background. They're kind of fighting each other right now. But there's, you know, as far as being open as a company, I I think the reason you don't see it more is that being open as a company also comes with a certain amount of risk. Um, you know, because business isn't always so clear cut. It's not always easy to solve problems. Um, and I being open means you're also open to your competition. So and that I think that's a reason why a lot of companies decide to take this black box approach because, the more information they put out there, it's not just information to their customers, but it's information to their competitors. Um, but I think there's still a way of doing it that doesn't put you at as much risk um, as might be assumed. And like you said, the space is pretty new. And with any kind of like uh, newer space, um, we have a lot of opportunity. But with all of that opportunity, there's no clear roadmap on how to handle any given situation either. Um, but this space is um, it's very personal. You have a lot of people that that are basically like almost like little mini business owners that are trying to maintain a space and, create like a little gym in their house. And a lot of us are on the creative side or on the handy side or um, maybe have entrepreneurial spirits and things like that. So, I think um, some of these things that happen hit home a little closer to home for a lot of people. And because of that, you could get these big reactions. A lot of people know each other, a lot of people are talking. Um, and then you get that somebody gets a hold of something like that, like the lawsuit, and they post it online, and now everybody has an opinion about it. But like you said, you know, that is why I wanted to talk to you and, just kind of get this thought process out there of, you know, what are ways that we could handle problems that aren't directed at hurting somebody? Um, now, you're that manufacturer or whatever, and you get that review, you might take that as a direct attack, which is kind of what this looks like, is it's being taken as, somebody's trying to aid their competition. They're trying to hurt their business. So they are going to take the nuclear option themselves. And, um, you know, whether it's intimidation or it's to actually make money back via litigation, or to me, what is the worst of it is the it's the intimidation by setting a precedent. Um, and that's kind of what I worry about with a lot of things going on in the world now, political or otherwise, is that we're setting certain precedents um, that will direct how everything else goes. And because we're newer, I I hate to see the space turn into every other commercialized space that is just, you know, everybody's in cutthroat competition with each other and there's no other way of handling it. Um, and that doesn't mean that everybody has to be best friends and we can't compete. Because that that also doesn't really work. But um, I I just don't want to see people that are producing the information for everybody out there to all of a sudden now they're starting to self censor and hold things back because they're afraid of being sued or whatever by companies or individuals that have more monetary power than they do. Um, because, that, like you said, that may be the quickest way to destroy the space as far as innovation goes, as far as it being um, a testing ground for new ideas. And, you know, once you start going down that path, that there you might not be able to recover it. Um, like I said, in certain things like IP, you don't have much of a choice. Because if you don't defend your IP with litigation, you don't do it legally. You also set a precedent that your product isn't defensible. And I think that's something that's broken in IP law. That they put they put all the weight on the inventor, the person that holds the IP to defend it. Um, I don't think that's right because I think that leads to things like this, to where anybody that comes out with something else, you have to lean on them because if you don't, you might not be able to defend your IP in the future. Um, but we don't have that. There's no rule here as far as with defamation or whatever. Um, I think manufacturers should lean on their products if they feel that they're good products, tell people why they're good products. If you're sending it to multiple reviewers and multiple reviewers are pointing out certain things that aren't right, um, it's probably a pretty good indication that the product just isn't that great. And if that's the case, the next thought should be, how do we fix it? How do we make it better? And then, you know, once you solve those problems, if you could solve those problems, you know, send it back out there, see what you can do. Um, but you know, I yeah, knowing like the people involved, and I I don't think that this is some directed attack to try to manipulate the markets and to I think it's more of, hey, we got this product. It wasn't great. We tried some correspondence that didn't go so well. Um, we still gotta, we have to make our views and whatever. Uh, and making a fun video that is negative generates views and attention, and that's what people that have YouTube channels ultimately they're trying to do is you know uh they're trying to generate views and attention to their page. Um but like I said, there's ways of doing that too that maybe aren't so great. I don't want that precedent set that this is the way that it should be handled. Um
Yeah, I mean, let me say something as to go along with that. With first of all, um, giving a harsh review is hard. Like, I think it's the last thing most creators want to do. Like, they
uh,
don't want to go out and bash a product. Um, but sometimes, like,
it could end your relationship with a manufacturer if you do that.
right, right. It's just not. I mean, it's just really, really hard to do. So it does take guts to like be a true, honest reviewer. Um, and then to go along with that, I mean, you need that honesty to build trust with your audience. Um, so that they have faith in what you're suggesting. You're not just
Right.
suggesting every single thing.
I think we've seen that too with like reviewers that people think are more monetarily captured. They start to lose a certain amount of credibility if they're just kind of, one sided all the time, or they don't say the things that are wrong with products. You listen to a review and it's like, oh, this product's the best thing ever. And then you get it. They're not just angry with the manufacturer. Now they're angry with you as a reviewer because you didn't point those things out, and you
Yeah.
lose your audience that way.
Yeah. And then also to add on to that, I think going back to like building this industry as a whole, what's going to what's going to really build it is, I mean, a few different things. So it is number one, manufacturers like yourself making really good stuff, like continuing to make better and better stuff for the home gym. And that comes at, and also like making it of value. So it's a value that more people can consider. And then number two, you need people to spread the word. So like I think there should be a like more mutual respect for the manufacturers from the creator side, and then more respect from the manufacturers to the creators, because uh Gluck's Gym, Garage Gym Reviews, a lot of the earlier reviewers have really helped grow this space in general. Because it's from a consumer side, you're not just following the companies. You're not just like, they're presenting their information as is. Some are doing it better than others and maybe are a little bit more entertaining, but it takes a creator um to help spread the word. And I think a lot of I think there's a lot of companies that don't understand how hard it is to like be a creator. And there's probably also a lot of creators who don't know how hard it is to run a business. So like just merging that gap, I think a little bit can help a lot. But that takes relationships as well. So you need relationships within the space, understanding that both sides are going to do what they need to do to help grow the space themselves, run their own business. Um, so I don't. That might be a little bit random, but I think that's a point that could also be made within this. Creators are scared of litigation. They're just going to be timid. There's going to be less creators, and they're going to be afraid to like really say what they need to say.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of support too. Um, the space is just going to become these larger creators that necessarily aren't as afraid of litigation, because maybe they have the means to defend themselves or whatever. Which I don't think there's a lot of those in this space, at least, that are so well off that they go toe to toe with some of these companies. Um, so you know, yeah, like you said, I mean, the goal here should be increased understanding between manufacturers, customers, suppliers, uh, reviewers, content creators, um, because we see so many things that just get lost in translation between these interactions, especially like these ones that blow up. Um, and people start demonizing one side or the other, or they just refuse to look at something a different way. But I think you force that when you go to these extreme measures to take care of problems like this. Um, I get it from the manufacturer's perspective that you're gonna be hurt by it. You got maybe you got employees that you're responsible for. You have, you got to make money to stay alive. You're in a space that's highly competitive just by the nature of it. Um, but you know, once you label yourself something, it's really hard to kind of convince people that think of you that way any different, because as we see in anything else, people generally want to confirm what their original impression is of whatever they had. And that's unfortunate that it's hard for people to hold multiple concepts in their head and, try to look at things from both sides. And I think that requires taking the ego out of it. There's a lot of that in any space. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of pride, um, and uh, I just don't think those are useful tools when you're talking about uh, relationships and building understanding. Um, because you put people or manufacturers on their heels. You back a dog into a corner, th- they're gonna try to bite you. And we're we're all just trying to figure it out. Um, so uh, yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot more to say about it other than, I wish we could figure out some different solutions to things um, that don't require trying to financially ruin one another, or um, intimidate people or scare people to not speak their mind or make certain content or whatever. Because, even if it's worst case scenario, and let's just assume that all of these things that are saying that they're claiming in this lawsuit are true, that it's some kind of purposeful attempt to, hurt their company or whatever. Um, it doesn't do anything for you in the long term to go about it this way because of the things that we talked about. Um, and you lose the opportunity of the exposure. Like in show business, they always talk about any publicity is good publicity. And there's some truth to that. Um, it's not totally true, like we're seeing now. But I think it's the reaction to whatever that publicity is. Um, because you tend to see who people are when they're put in difficult situations, not when everything is going right. And um, so use it as an opportunity to show who you are as an individual, as a company, or as a manufacturer, or whatever, and you know figure out a different way to handle the problem. Um, and then if it gets down to it, and there's just no other way of going about it, and litigation's all you got left, then that's all you got left. But um, I just think there's a lot of hasty reactions going on right now to what's happening, and I don't like to see it. So um, that's pretty much all I got for you.
Yeah, I think the goal here is really just to, get let's chat through this so that this doesn't become a recurring issue. Because kind of like we both talked about earlier, this slows down everything within the home gym space. And I think a home gym has the ability to help out a lot of lives,
Yeah,
especially as just the space gets more exposure, equipment gets better, community gets tighter. There's a lot of potential for that to continue. We wouldn't want it to get ruined by this sort of stuff.
yeah, yeah. And you know, like you said, this should be a space where we're trying to um, encourage people getting stronger, um, getting healthier, and trying, from the manufacturer's perspective, not just trying to show how good of a designer you are, how good of a manufacturer you are, but providing tools that make it easier for people to do those things. Um, so I think if that's in the forefront, as an equipment provider, that you're aiming to reduce the friction of people getting healthier and stronger. Um, I don't see how that could lead to anything bad. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully people reconsider and do things a different way.
Yep. So, I mean, if anybody has thoughts, let us know. Feel free to throw them into the comments. We know a lot of other equipment manufacturers are going to listen. We know, a lot of the most passionate home gym owners are also going to listen to this. So, you know, let us know what you think. If we're off, let us know. If you agree, um, I think we pretty much had the same thoughts based off of our conversation. But yeah, hope this helps.
Good talking to you.
Good talk. Thanks.